Good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Veena Ramani's book, Bird in a Banyan Tree. Today our panel comprises Malvika Sanghvi. She requires very little introduction, being a very prominent journalist on the Indian scene for decades. Notably the Times of India editor for the Sunday edition. And also Patricia Pereira Sethi, an American journalist of Goan extraction with also a very illustrious past, particularly in interviewing some of the most controversial and powerful figures of the 20th century. Veena Ramani requires also very little introduction. I have known Veena for almost my entire life. I knew her as a child and have grown up with Veena. Although I don't know if Veena has grown up. I have grown up at all. People would tell Veena, Veena, what an amazing life you have led. Why don't you write your memoirs? Today I have the privilege of saying, yes, she did. Before we begin, I would like to posit this idea to you. In the postmodern, the autobiography seems to be one of the most popular forms of authorship. Veena sits here today with her first book in her 71st year, and this is an amazing thing. And I would like to ask, I think I'll direct this to Malvika first. In the case of a biography, we must ask ourselves when we go to the bookcase or at the bookshelf in the bookstore, why read this biography? For those of you who know Veena, you don't need to ask that question. You open the pages and you know you're going to get a ride of your life. But Malvika, could you maybe address the question about why we read any biography, and Veena's in particular?
Thank you, Victoria. I must add that I knew of Veena and our paths had crossed over the years, but I didn't know her very well. So I read the book as many readers would, having known of her more as a public figure. And why we should read this book and what I take away from this book are three things. And I leave the last, which is the most important, which I'll come to as a third. The first reason is the breadth of the book. It starts in Karachi, it takes in Bombay, Dadar and Breach Candy. It goes on to London, San Francisco, New York, Delhi, Goa. And this is not just a recollection of different places. Veena's writing. The second reason is an enormous amount of insights you get into some of the most interesting people of our time. From Raj Kapoor, who stayed with Veena in New York, to Shami Kapoor, Zubin Mehta, Indira Gandhi, the kind of insights that we are afforded of people who are on stage. We are told their off-stage lives in a very intimate, interesting way, and that is fascinating. But the third reason why we should read this book is, I feel, the most important. For too long, we have stereotypes of people. You look at Veena and you see this strong, glamorous, slightly controversial, but international figure. And then you read the book, and you also see a courageous, vulnerable, honest, a person that you'd never imagine seeing Veena right now. So I think it's a very important lesson for all of us to know that what you see is not what you get. The sum total of a human being is not just their public lives. This book gives you an insight into a very important phase of our society and an important person, and it's told with such honesty. I hope I haven't taken too much time. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question to Patricia, who has interviewed, my goodness, the list leads look at a UN roster. Everybody from George Bush to Fidel Castro, Pinochet, Indira and Rajiv Gandhi. So this is a woman who understands the public persona. Often the public persona is larger than life. Patricia, Bina, in her own right, is a public persona. In many respects, reluctantly. Could you give us some insight into how the book gives you a little bit more of an intimate look into a public person?
Sure. Thank you, Maya. As Maya has said, people have this preconceived notion of this public figure. And since I've interviewed these 45 heads of state, the people I meet when I'm doing the interview for Newsweek, those people are very different from the ones I get to meet when I sit down and have a cup of coffee with them, play with their kids, or as with George Bush, checked out the carpets in his home, while Barbara Bush brought over some sandwiches and tea, or Fidel Castro, who's such a strong, imposing character when you were doing the interview, very authoritarian, very strong. And then in private life, he was a sensitive, gentle, terribly funny character. So Bina is, in that sense, this public figure, very sensual. All the men look at her. She looks so terrific at this age. But she's also controversial. And she calls a spade, and sometimes she's not very diplomatic. In private, this is a very warm, sensitive, gracious woman with tremendous people skills. And most important, she's a feminist who has faced cancer, the kidnapping of her children, sexual harassment, and she still comes out on the side of women. And even now, she is on the side of the downtrodden woman, working to uplift them. And all this is evident in the book, which is why I find the book very, very interesting, because there are two sides to this point. This is the Gemini, if I can say so. So here we are, and let's see what Bina has to say about it.
Bina, thank you, Patricia, thank you, Malvika. This is, first of all, we're at a grave disadvantage with only 30 minutes because Bina covers 70 years and we get 30 minutes with her. So we would like to move quickly. The question I have for you, Bina, is as a feminist, as a woman who has a very strong sense of her own feminine power, the one thing that I was struck with in the book is the strong men. Almost every important decision of your life has been made in reference to strong men. A father, a couple of brothers, a husband. There are strong men, and I won't tell you the nitty-gritty. Read the book, you will be amazed by it. So Bina, can you tell me what it means to be a feminist in reference to loving men and respecting men and working with men?
I hope everybody here is interested in a subject like this, because all of us, men and women here, have been gifted at birth with the yin and the yang. Some of us are men, others are women, but we do have the two elements in us, and I wasn't born with this knowledge at all. I've learned it, taught it to myself over the years, and found that if one is to live in this universe as I did, having to support myself, having come from a privileged background, but my marriage took me to another world where I had to support myself, and it was a tough life. And the role, yes, as Maya Victoria told you, it's been very strongly dominated by men my life from childhood, with a strong father, four brothers-in-law. I was the youngest of 9 children, so lots of men growing up in the patriarchal system dominated my life, made my decisions for my moves ahead in life, and then a dominating first husband, a wonderful second husband, but by then I'd learned to balance out a lot, and in fact he taught me how to balance the yin and the yang, bring out the man within me, and more that I discovered living in this world as a woman, by having the man within me, supporting me through all the crises that one does face in the natural life, to keep in close touch with my own feminine side, my own feminine mystique. And I just feel that I love being a woman. I'd like to be born a woman again. Definitely not with so much patriarchal attention and guidance. I'd like to find it out for my own self. But however, today I'm very happy with the journey I went through, and even as hard as it was, and many times, that I have learned to balance out and enjoy the feminine mystique and be able to stand up to man. And we do have some difficult men in our country, as we know. I've had to face a lot of those types too, as you would read in the book.
The book begins quite provocatively with the Jessica Lall case. I'm sure everybody in this room is conversant with that. I can't find the word tragedy. It goes beyond a tragedy. It's a national tragedy. It's a tragedy of justice. And that book begins with Bina's horrible incarceration in Tihar jail. Bina, can you tell us a little bit about how the Jessica Lall case and how its denouement actually prompted you to write this book?
Yes. The Jessica Lall tragedy happened at our restaurant about 14 years ago today. And it was truly a tragedy for everybody concerned, and in a very large measure for me and my family. And typically in India, with what we see today in the political fabric of India, there's very little room to be honest and be allowed to live an honest life in your day-to-day living. It's just not, they don't allow you that. However, we had the fortune or misfortune of being witnesses, and I in particular happened to have the most important role of witness, and I had to pay a heavy price for that, because the other side, the person who shot Jessica Lall, came from a very powerful business and political family, and they made many threats to us. The media had just been born. NDTV and all the TV channels did not exist even a few months before that. So we were the best fodder that they could get. Unfortunately, it cost us dearly. We remained in their headlines as bad people who had something terrible to do with the murder, with mysteries surrounding it, and India was very quick to judge us as somehow responsible for the murder. And it's very intriguing, long, winding. It went on for 12 years, and at midway point, it took a very high turn when a re-trial was ordered by the president, and the legislation was changed to allow that. And at that time, they came full throttle after me as the witness, because by then they bought out all the other witnesses, and they threatened me to have amnesia, which I refused to have, and if I didn't, they were going to ruin our lives, which they nearly did, and nearly had us deported. And then they decided that if my testimony is going to be heard, which the courts had decided, I was the only witness left, then all they could do to stop that was to ruin my credibility and my reputation, and they built up false cases against me and threw me in jail. It was in those days in jail that I decided I'm going to start writing what's happening inside. And from there the book continues, and you will read the rest. And you must it's very intriguing. There's much more than any of you know from the history that you may have read in the papers and so on.
I'd like to ask one question to the journalists on our panel. Do you believe today that this type of book, which is part confession but part expose, is a primary voice today in a balanced system of information in India or even in the world today? Because the press tells their story, and then the victims of the encounter resort to things like making counter.
I think Beena has very rightly told her story, but in today's world, we don't need people to actually have to write books. There are blogs, there is the internet, there is YouTube to address, to talk about your life and put it out there. So there are various means. What it amounts to is that news is now democratized. And everybody has their chance to put their story out in the open. So books is one way, but there are other ways also.
I agree with that, totally. But I think we should open it up.
We have only about 10 minutes left. We'd like to open this to the audience right now. I know very few of you have been privy to the book, but I know that Beena is a very prominent figure, and you must have questions for her.
The mic. There's a mic on the table. Take the other mic. Other mic.
A question in the back?
Yeah, will you?
Ma'am?
Yes, you're audible.
Why don't you stand up so everybody can see your lovely face that you have? Yes, come.
I just wanted to ask you the process of writing the book. How long did it take you? Who read your manuscript? Who edited it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, good question actually. I started, as I said, writing about 7 years ago in Tihar. And then when I came out, justice happened, life imprisonment was awarded. And I intended to continue with that passion, but I had to pick up the pieces of my life that had gone so badly astray, so that I really had to shelve and put the book aside. Few years later, about 4 years later, I decided to write again. Something stirred me up and said, if it happened to me, and then my friends used to say, this could happen to us, why did they treat you so badly? It could happen in anyone's home, it was an accident. And I began to question, who am I and why did this happen to me? So I started to write again, and very diligently over a period of 9-10 months, I just put out, and I'm not a writer at all, I'm not even a college graduate, so I really did not have those skills. But I just put out from my soul everything I felt and went deeply into my memory bank and brought it out. And at some point, my 2 daughters began to feel concerned that I might be doing the wrong thing and revealing too much about our lives to the world. They had experienced very difficult times in our Jessica Lall days. So I shelved it in deference to their choice. And then I ran into a publisher last year who said, we've been looking for you, and it was a publisher that I had great admiration for. And he said, well, listen, the story has to be told, the truth has to come out. Nobody really knows what happened. It was covered up very quickly. And he provided me a little help with finding someone who could encourage me to stitch my sentences, my thoughts together. And then there came a point where suddenly I found my voice. It was a fabulous process. And it just started to pour out. And there were memories from childhood, things that I didn't even my elders don't remember. And it's been an amazing journey and very cathartic, getting in to oneself and giving it out. And I'm hoping that my children will enjoy reading it after all. And
Yes, we have another question in the center there.
Beena, you've done so many path-breaking things in your life. Now, do you see yourself as a fiction writer? Is that the
You want to
journey?
know, Bulbul, if I see myself as a fiction writer? No, my life is so full of fictional things that I don't have to imagine anything. I always wonder for writing fiction. When I was younger, in my teenage years, I read fiction and Sheldon. I don't even remember the names anymore because I really love non-fiction for the last many years, and I can never imagine writing fiction. No. But my book reads like fiction, but it's absolutely real.
Did you receive?
You found a good question.
Yeah. On post-partition work, now did you have difficulty in writing things that you knew would be read by existing family members or what you felt then? Did that happen?
And you have emerged successful. And as you mentioned, you have that man in you that has helped you reach there. What message do you have for all those underprivileged women who are voiceless about those people who have done harm to their reputation and have exploited them? What message do you have
For them? I tell you, so we start with this, the second part of your question. Immediately the message that comes to mind is for those who have tried to do harm to others and have harmed themselves or have not led a life in society of the straight kind. I think the most important message, and I was given a chance to recognize it in myself when I was pushed against the wall with the Jessica Lall thing, is to be in touch with your integrity. There's so much power within one's own self. And God, whatever, the universe, puts you through challenging experiences because they want you to understand the reality, the truth inside you. And most of the people live on the outside and they get affected by influences outside and they react to that. And then the reaction comes back and hits them. And that's the time, let's say they made a mistake of reacting wrongly and that now came back and hit them. We know many such instances. That's the moment one should take an opportunity and say, oh, I did the wrong thing, I had a wrong intention, but now I'm about to pay for it. And then look for that. Trust me, each and every one of you has this incredible reservoir inside. It's there, it's golden. Just tap into it and it just reveals incredible answers, and it's your shield. Like soldiers with the shield outside, you have it inside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bina Ramani, Bird in a Banyan Tree. Thank you very much.